The change came without warning. One morning, the world woke up to find that every sound had accelerated, as if time itself had tapped its foot too quickly. Birds outside no longer sang, but scattered sharp bursts of squeaks, so fast that they resembled static. When people tried to speak, their voices collapsed into rushed fragments, like balloons rubbing against glass. Conversations dissolved into gibberish, laughter cracked like glass, and music, once patient, turned into a frantic storm that no one could follow. At first, it seemed like a prank of nature. Alarm clocks exploded in ears instead of ringing, car horns stuttered like broken toys, and the simple act of boiling water produced an aggressive metallic shriek that vanished in a blink. Cities became confused theaters where police sirens arrived as short hiccups, crosswalk signals pulsed with unreadable speed, and daily life turned into a blur of incomprehensible cues. Governments attempted speeches, but leaders' words rushed out so quickly that the soundtracks became useless. It was as if humanity had lost the language of its own voice. Yet, silence remained untouched. In those rare gaps, people found relief. Strangers began to rely on gestures, phones, and handwritten notes. The deaf community suddenly became guides, teaching others how to live without relying on ears. Engineers worked frantically, searching for solutions. Within days, a young student released a program that slowed incoming audio by stretching it to normal speed. People called these digital filters anchors. Earbuds equipped with anchors became lifelines, making voices almost recognizable again, though they still carried a helium-like timbre. Restaurants began handing out paper menus with pens, schools shifted to written lessons, and couples invented new rituals of communication through touches and drawings. Still, many things could not be fixed. Dogs barked until they exhausted themselves, unable to understand their own voices. Ocean waves rushed too quickly, making people near the shore feel as though the earth itself was hyperventilating. Rain lost its calming rhythm and became a chaotic rattle. For musicians, the tragedy was heavier. Instruments betrayed them. A piano key struck no longer produced a steady note, but a skittering, fragile sound, impossible to shape into melody. Many wept at the loss, convinced that music itself had died. But humans are stubborn in the face of silence. Orchestras began to adapt, rewriting symphonies into new patterns of rapid tremors and flashes of tone. The first experimental concert shocked audiences. Strings no longer held long notes, but stitched delicate bursts like lace, while brass instruments tore the air with lightning cracks. It was not the music of the past, but it carried beauty in its own distorted way. Some listeners cried, not because it was ugly, but because it proved that creation could survive even when the rules of physics betrayed us. Meanwhile, a cultural shift unfolded. People began lowering their voices, speaking slowly and deeply, so that the accelerated echo returned something almost human. Teenagers started entire trends of bass poetry, whispering words that stretched themselves into comprehension. Radio stations rebranded as Slow FM, their DJs murmuring like dreamers. Cafes opened where silence was treated as luxury, and architects began designing spaces where rushing noise could not intrude. The world had lost its soundtrack, but it discovered a new rhythm. Families clung to memory. Old recordings of weddings and lullabies were sped into nonsense, but careful technicians stretched them back, saving fragments of the past. Although the restored sounds carried strange timbres, they were close enough to spark tears. One grandmother, who had abandoned her piano after the transformation, returned when engineers built an instrument with embedded anchors. The piano's voice was corrected before it reached the air, and when she pressed a single note, it bloomed like a flower surviving winter. For her, that moment was proof that art could still breathe. Over time, what once felt like disaster began to feel like rebirth. The world had been forced into silence and adaptation, but humanity discovered new ways of listening, of inventing, of speaking without words. And in that strange accelerated reality, one truth echoed clearly. Sound may change, but the need to connect, to express, and to create will always find its own rhythm.